Welcome, everyone. Good morning. My name is Audrey Ronas-Tobin. I'm Director of Marketing here at Co-Strategics. Thank you for joining us today for our webinar, Technology and Digital Trends to Shape Your 2021 Strategy. Before we begin, I'd like to mention a few housekeeping items. First, your lines will be muted, but please feel free to submit any questions you may have in the chat panel. We will answer all the questions at the end of the webinar. Also, we're recording today's webinar and we'll send you a link at the end when it's posted, so you don't need to worry about taking notes. And now, without further ado, I'd like to introduce our speaker, Nan Jairam. Nan is the founder and CEO of Co-Strategics. Nan's passion is to help craft digital and data strategies that drive new revenue streams and operational efficiencies. He loves to stay on the leading edge of all things related to digital transformation, data and analytics, artificial intelligence, and machine learning. Nan defines his mission as tapping into the collective curiosity of employees and partners to create new possibilities for customers, communities, and each other. Okay, take it away, Nan.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. As you know, my name is Nan, which is my user-friendly name. So today I'm going to be talking to you about a few general topics around strategic planning, right? As it relates to IT and digital, it's becoming central in almost all of the planning sessions that we have. So I'm going to talk about some of the top technology trends. We're going to take a look at a business canvas. This is actually a takeaway tool that you can use in your own sort of a planning process. Then how do you bring it all together, and as you frame a strategy, we'll talk a little bit about that. And how do you kind of get the buy-in from the rest of your leadership team, right? So look at some of the trends, and then how do you kind of frame a strategy for your own organization? That's kind of the agenda for today, and then we'll end with a few questions and answers if there are any at that point. So let's take a look at today's context, right? There is a lot of things going on, and this word has become prime and central, right? Disruption, because everybody had a plan at the beginning of January this year, and come March, everything had to be changed, right? Revamped, disrupted. It caused a huge disturbance in everybody's business plans. So this is sort of a common theme that businesses are planning as we go forward. So if you kind of go into a little bit more, right, COVID was a major disruption. But so is a tree falling in your pathway as you're driving to work, right? Different forms of disruptions, different level of impacts, right? And so, but the response to them is somewhat similar, meaning you're first going to understand, and then you're going to react to whatever is happening. And then you're going to look for a long-term fix. Same thing, action is accompanied with a behavioral change. You have to take immediate action when you're met with disruption. Then you have to, kind of look at how to prevent that from happening in the future. And same time, right, you're optimizing initially, making sure you are able to do the things you are to do, right, at the very minimum. And then kind of looking for growth, right? Making sure you don't lose customers, or being able to serve them on time or within these service level agreements and so on, right? By making your employees remote and so on. And then, you're going to look at how do I grow, right? Go back to the original playbook that you had prior to COVID. So, all of these choices, right, the impacts are sort of hidden. You have to kind of parse and look for it. So this is one concept I'd like to sort of keep in the back of our minds as we go through different trends. So going to the next one, right? So there is a concept of handling these disruptions, right? We are actually going through a sort of a decision cycle. I like this particular one. There are many forms like this in use today. This one is called OODA loop, right? And if you just Google that, this is what you get. This was actually made popular it was actually conceptualized by the United States Air Force colonel, right? His name is John Boyd. And OODA stands for, observing, orienting, then you're deciding, and then acting on it. So every time there is a decision that you have to make or a disruption that you have to react to, you're applying this whole concept of a OODA loop in some sense. Now, if you take a look at, do I need to optimize or transform, right? Because in the wake of disruption, you can continuously optimize, or you can also look towards transformation. Now, either or both of those choices, right, are not good or bad, right? It just depends on the context that individual is in, that organization is in, from an industry standpoint, from an ecosystem standpoint. So if you look at your own capabilities, right, whether it be business wise, from an IT standpoint, and if you feel like, you're more like a coal-fired engine, right, because of certain things that you might have, optimization may mean that, you have to make sure the steam and the pressure is all optimal and you're not burning uh, the engine itself out in the process, but you are definitely optimizing and controlling, by use of code. But if you are faced against, right, your competitor looks more like this, then you don't have much choice, right? You almost have to transform. It's time for change. You can't just look at optimization and sort of, expect to, keep up from a market standpoint. So it's a combination of factors. Where you are, you could be this, right? Then, you could still be optimizing at a level where you are, right? Not necessarily coal, but, you might be investing in some operational systems that can make better use of the resources if you are flying like a bullet train, right? That shows in the picture. So that's another concept to keep in the back of mind. Now, having gone through these, right, really what are we doing is, as we are reacting, we are applying this particular loop, right, the OODA loop, and the time it takes to observe, orient, decide, and act is large, right? It used to, be days, weeks, months, and even quarters, right? But that whole thing, was all focused around efficiency, because when you observe, right, you're looking at a lot of different factors, you're making a decision, but you are expecting that your ecosystem, the environment, and all of these remain unchanged while you're going through this particular loop, right? So every one of us can sort of implement this in our day-to-day lives as well, but the same is the case with organizational decision making as well. So the OODA loop, when it's long, is more wider. It has more distance. The circle itself is broad, right? It has a larger diameter, if you will. But on the other side, if you have OODA loops that are really small, right, then you're making like quick decisions. You are, observing, orienting, deciding, and acting. So this is the capability that something like COVID has demanded of organizations lately, right? So the efficiency is no more a playbook. It's more of an agility or flexibility that an organization should have. Are your systems flexible enough? Could you go create a VM instance, or could you open up a set of APIs on the fly, right? Because you're addressing certain demand of the customer that suddenly showed up at your doorstep, right? So agility is taking place of efficiency today, right? So that's kind of a third concept to keep in mind. So finally, if you summarize these, right, disruption has immediate response, OODA loops and timing, right, how fast you go at it, optimization or transformation, right, both are good. In some cases, you just want to optimize, some cases you want to transform. And at the end of the day, agility trumps the efficiency in today's strategic choices. So if you keep these four concepts, let's kind of go through the top trends, right? And I'm going to go through each of these trends. There's about 8. And for each of these, there is a core concept and then some takeaway ideas for these things. So for example, right, first one, let's start with business and technology fusion. So the core idea is, are you using technology or selling technology, right? So until now, technology or IT function was supportive in nature, right? It was supporting the rest of the functions within the organization. But today what's happening is, technology is becoming central, it's becoming strategic. It is actually being exposed to the end customer. What do you mean by that, right? You might be writing an application. There's so many customers, they are building these digital platforms that is so unique that you can't find an equivalent platform in the market on the shelf ready to buy. It's highly customized. it has a secret sauce that's built into that platform, and the platform touches the journey of their end customers. So end customers are really buying the platform, and by using that, they're becoming so entrenched in that they can't actually switch to another competitor. So it's creating dramatic new boundaries, right, or competitive advantages in doing so. So this whole business and technology, right, it's fusing in ways that we as business leaders or technology leaders have to sort of keep that in the back of mind. So for example, Domino's, and many people have heard this, right? They're really a technology company that sells pizzas. I personally like Marco's pizzas because they're our customer, but the framing of Domino's is something I'd say we could copy, right? So is marketing a function that uses technology, or is it a technology function that does marketing? So is your operations, right, a technology function? Because you will see that every department, right, or has got their own set of technologies, their own agenda, often which all of those involve buying software and using it. And they may very easily go rogue on that as well, right? So you want to, facilitate that. At the same time, right, you have to comprehend what is the bigger concept, which is these lines between technology as it stands today, where IT was a function and the rest of the business functions are all blurring. A company is becoming, it's very common competency is a technology competency. Then they may build homes, or they may do media buys, or they might do, might bake and deliver pizzas, right? So those are the common technology, become the common competency happens to be technology at this point. So if you take that trend, right, to your own business, you should look at how do I integrate business and IT, right? If you're an IT leader, how do I go a step closer towards the business? And if you're a business leader and you have ability to make the decisions, how do you kind of, you know, physically locate the, the IT team itself, right? Instead of the bottom floor relegated to a cost center, they have to be integrated. Maybe there are business analysts that span the two different functions. You have to take a look at the overall customer experience, because the customer experience is delivered by a range of functions, right, within our company. It's not just IT can do that, or neither operations alone can't do that, because it now involves technology across the board. So you will have to map the entire customer experience there. And multi-channel engagement and delivery, reducing these silos and blending business roles into IT. These are some of the takeaway points, right? That you could build into this. And finally, these platforms that I talked about, from an engagement standpoint, partners, supply chain partner, employees, all of these have digital touch points today. How do we take all that and blend it by and still, somehow do away with the silo that exists within IT and the rest of the functions today? Because the customer outside is expecting experiences that sort of spans beyond the silos the organization has. In some ways, the organizational design is outdated, right? And COVID has sort of accelerated this whole thing. So if you take away these points, right, they might be some of the points that you would, adapt and capture yourself for your own strategic presentation there. So finally, if you go to the next thing, right, the strategic role of IT. We talked about this a little bit in the previous slide, but I'll go a little bit more deeper here, which is right from a cost center to a revenue generation. IT is not just being looked at to run the systems, to run the voice over IP communication systems. They're being asked to come into a boardroom and sit at a strategy table and basically contribute to the overall growth of the company, right? And so when you are asked to do that, you have to be responsive, you have to be engaging, you have to be driving, right? You have to be showing them the way of all the things that's possible from a technology standpoint. Because the business themselves may know which direction they want to go, but they can't exactly map. They don't know exactly how to get there. They might say that in colorful words. It's up to the systems thinkers to kind of reduce that to a blueprint so you can implement and kind of deliver on that. So when you have this expectation, right, there is a bimoral nature of IT, right? You're always, if you look at IT in a traditional sense, it's always been about risk averseness. I'll have a backup to a backup, and I will like test it out, stage these things, and then roll out and those type of things. Some of these experimentation requires an agility and flexibility, right? You will have to be fast, you will have to experiment. Agile as a process helps with it. You can also you will have to be ready to fail, learn, and go through those OODA loop cycles in a fairly rapid manner. So the other recommendation is, have at least one business analyst within IT. A lot of mid-sized organizations do not have this, and some have defaulted into those positions, right? They become the liaison with the business units. You may want to bring in that type of a role intentionally and sort of build that. And then your own leadership style, right? There's always been to put it bluntly, right, sometimes be an order taker, right, than be a leader, right? So how can you just get 5 to 10 feet ahead of what the leadership's needs are from a technology standpoint, and be able to frame some of these things, right? And then be able to show that this is how you kind of implement it from an end-to-end standpoint, and these are the involved factors as we make some of these decisions. Process automation specialist, AI, machine learning, these are some of the things where adding these people to your team will sort of get that needle moving from a strategic standpoint, because the kind of questions somebody like a skill set like this would ask almost always spans a business domain. So they will have to interact with marketing, operations, sales, and understand the core business, right? And then they blend and create technology solutions that support from a business standpoint. So those would be point number two. And talent is definitely a challenging concept today, right? Because technology talent is in incredible demand. It almost COVID has not made an impact to the technology skill set itself, or the availability or the demand thereof. So you need flexible capacity, right? Because what if there's another event? You don't want to have a cost factor that you cannot easily shift, right? So you are looking as an organization for flexible capacity. Business and data analysts are in demand, wide spectrum of skills. Technology itself has so many unique, ingredients that go into a solution. You can't go hire an expert in every one of those technology. You cannot even also justify a full-time hire in many cases, right? And so that basically think of DevOps or data ops and things like that, right? And so those are some of the things that you have to keep in mind. But as far as takeaways, right? You can't find talent almost today that knows it all, right? Or knows exactly the type of technology you are looking for. So then what do, right? You are essentially hiring people for their growth mindset, right? All along, right? You look for how fast can they learn new things, right? How open they are to learning that. That becomes the key ingredient. And you have to tap into the talent pool early and let them kind of grow into your ecosystem. And of course, shameless plug here, there is also a ecosystem of digital partners, right, that somebody like CoStagix can help with. And likewise, there are many other players also in the marketplace. Building an ecosystem where you can dip in as needed on demand, that would be another strategy as well here. So from there, right, these were all like some of the soft aspects of strategy planning to keep in mind. Let's look at some of the more definitive aspects of it. The core idea around data and analytics capability, right? As we go through the OODA loop of decision making that is now accelerated due to a formidable disruption event like COVID, you need data at your fingertips. So you will see your leader screaming, right, asking for that data. Hey, how do I make decisions? Can you give me more high resolution analytics to make this, right? So that speed also becomes extremely important. And there's also a concept of mode 1 and 2, which I will elaborate in the next slide a little bit. And then some of these questions are being asked by the business folks, IT is actually in the way of doing that, because they have to put together a report, develop it, and then hand it off. Thereby, it takes time, right? So these are all the challenges that a mid-sized organization is running into. Now, if you look at some of the takeaways, right? You've got data assets. Everybody has, knowing what those are, securing that data warehouses and making sure they're modern and you can do the things you need to meet the business demands in a fast way. Those are some of the places to evaluate and then kind of invest to upgrade. If there is a need or you have to build it from scratch, that is something you have to make a decision there. And to begin, you can also formally assess the state of your own data and analytics. Where are you in that maturity continuum? Are you more in the descriptive side? Do you have all the data sets in one place? Can you now move to a little more predictive, prescriptive type models? These are some of the questions that you could ask as you frame your own particular strategy. So if you look, right, there's a couple of modes I said. In mode one, which is most likely what you will find today, right? Cognos, Crystal reports, SSRS, all these are mode one type reports. And they're usually developed by IT, published, it's scheduled and distributed. They're usually around operations. They're defensive in nature, right? And it's usually rear view mirror analytics. You look in the rear view, you see what's gone by. You can't change it. You can learn from it, but any other new tactic has to be applied going forward, hoping that the same scenario would repeat. And nobody foresaw COVID having this kind of an impact back even in January or Feb, right? So review mirror is helpful, but it's not enough, right, today. That's where you have to switch to mode two. Mode two is more open-ended. You are opening up data sets in a way that business can go author their own analytics. It's more collaborative. Each one of the authors, the other one can see and collaborate that way. Agile self-serve, it's offensive, right? They can be doing things that can, impact the top line, competitive advantages, and so on. It's also forward-looking in nature. Power BI, Azure Data Lake, Snowflake, all these fall under that particular realm of mode two. So a canvas would look like this, right? You got your data assets, priorities, SLAs, current technology stack, data characteristics, known opportunities that you are being asked, and some of the trends demand. So as you map this canvas out, there are certain things that emerge out of this. That is what you would go bake into your strategic plan for 2021. So that's the canvas. And so if you go to the next one, so we talked about data and analytics. The second, this other one is around security, privacy, and risks. There are a few core ideas, right? That's accelerating in this area. So we hear a lot of customers focused around this piece and helping them as well. Regulation and privacy, right, around data sets, customer data, or PII, all of that is becoming more pronounced. Every state is enacting their own legislation, and so we have to keep that in mind. The application scale and complexity has been naturally increasing, right? And there's all naturally also been a skills gap. If your IT is around 20 to 25 people, you might have one security analyst, right? If it is bigger than that, you might have a fractional chief information security officer, or you might have a partner or a third-party company filling that gap for you. But today with COVID, right, all these things are accelerated. The attacks, the expansion of digital channels, remote work, all opens up these problems even more, right? And so thereby this becomes a very critical piece. So this is all about mitigating risk and making sure business can continue, right? So do you have a security framework that is independently your own, right? Not the one that we all do, right, at the end of the year, check off on a bunch of points, right, methodical way for insurance or customer purposes. But what the recommendation is to have your own, such as a national NIST cybersecurity framework. That would be a good one. having a security analyst with a dedicated role, right? Not actually sharing that security responsibilities with other IT activities. CISO or a fractional CISO type person, right? Rethinking your own WAN, networking all the security devices, and then cloud workload protection, data privacy and governance. These are some of the takeaway points that you have to sort of apply to your context and see what are a few factors that emerge, and those become a set of points that will eventually go into a business canvas, and I'll walk you through the canvas here at the end of the presentation. So that's number 5, right? Processes is another thing. IT is usually seen as slow, right? The risk averse and delivery processes are usually underdeveloped. Why? Because business usually treated IT as a cost center, and now they're showing a seat at the strategy table. So now the expectation is that you're going to make promises, and then you're going to deliver on it, right? And so that means you have to invest in a process framework. You have to invest in project management. And if you are going to build products, right, or products that are exposed to end customers, they are not necessarily a one and done project. They're a product, it'll have a life of its own, a life cycle. So you have to be able to do the product management, continuously add features, obtain feedback, and keep that alive. So you're now suddenly becoming a sort of a startup, right? Building your own product. Do you have all the is there a visionary, is there a person who is continuously working with customers? All those become important instantly. So maybe adopt a delivery process, a scaled agile, disciplined agile delivery. These are some of the things that we help with as well. And tool set for service management, tools for project management, KPIs and reporting, right? So publishing these results become very important, because otherwise you're not going to shift the thinking overall, right? From the notion that IT is slow and they're usually resisting everything we ask them to do type of stuff. You have to kind of shift that whole thing. So maybe a monthly newsletter publishing some of these things that IT has done may not be a bad idea. So going into the last but one concept here, core idea, right? Location-free operations, optimal infrastructure, operational continuity, right? While working remote, being able to make it, disaster recovery, and so on. Modernizing some of your core systems, and making sure you've got a cloud that is, considered as a denominator. You have to have that for a lot of capabilities above. For example, data. Building a data infrastructure in-house is going to be expensive, especially where you can't use cloud services that have really interesting capabilities from a data standpoint. And so which of these are priority for you, right? And then making those initiatives. Cloud strategy doesn't mean that you're shifting everything over to the cloud. A lot of them even resist a cloud strategy and then kind of fragmented, in a fragmented manner, get into cloud because they're backing into cloud because of some requirement coming from an application that they have to build and deliver in short period of time. They go make a quick decision, right? So instead of doing that, can we have a quick, practical, overarching cloud strategy while knowing that you've got workloads within your own in-premise setups? Right, and then modernization is not about just taking the projects or applications you have and recasting it, in a better UI, but it's actually modernizing the process, right? An example would be you're not really showing a spreadsheet inside of your dashboard, right? A dashboard has multiple levels to how you make data actionable, right? So those are some of the things how you go about modernizing. And finally, this is a major concept. Okay, just checking time here really quick. So we're on track. So core idea is a digital equivalent concept, right? You have products and services you provide today. What is its digital twin? What is its digital equivalent, which you can also expose to your customers, thereby creating a value that is complementary to the value your product and services create, right? So that's a key concept. And for all of that, you have to have sort of a loosely coupled composable architecture. When things begin to shift, you should be able to rewire on short notice, deliver a different experience. think about ordering food, right? And how all of the restaurants have adjusted to the new context we have. All of that is sort of going to become the norm going forward. And you got your systems of record, your CRM systems, your financial systems, and all of that. Your systems of insight, you might have data warehouses, you might have Cognos, those type of reports. And then you have your front end website, e-commerce systems, all of those that have a touch point with your end customer. So you have to take all of these concepts, right, and sort of frame a digital strategy around it. What do you mean by that? And we'll take a quick look here on how you go about doing that. You inventory all the systems you have and essentially use a canvas like this, where you have all your existing systems of record, systems of engagement and insight. For example, ERP systems, e-commerce systems, data warehouses. What do an equivalent modernized version looks like for each of those systems? That's what you're trying to determine. And to do that, you first have to have an inventory of all the current state. That would be a great starting point. And you do this type of an exercise, and before you make a choice, you look at your customers, competitors, where can you, innovate from a business model, data standpoint, all within a crucible of culture, right? This is something an organization should have, or the leadership actually should be actively developing this as well. So you bring this all together to kind of create your digital sort of a strategy canvas. And that's the eighth aspect, right? So we've looked at all of these different things. So there are ideas baked in, and some are general ideas. Some will be very specifically applicable to your own context, and others you will have to extrapolate or sort of stretch this and see where which project may actually make sense given these strategic trends. But these are trends that we see in the marketplace. This is also something that we've noticed other research outfits are also talking about it, right? That's something we subscribe to, and we tap into these multiple different channels for sort of putting this set of 8 together. So that's one set. Now, if you take all these ideas and you put it into a canvas, right? A strategy canvas would look like this. Think of post-it notes around your business priorities. So this you ought to know, talking with your leadership team. If you're in IT and if your leadership team, you capture your business priorities. IT leadership, IT talent, what is the current state? And what are the technology stack and things you have from an inventory standpoint? All those go into this side. What are the demands? What are the opportunities, possibilities from data analytics, digital strategy that we just talked, project portfolio management processes, and what are some of the modernization initiatives that you know already? So if you capture that along with I&O, infrastructure operations, security, privacy, compliance, a whole bunch of post-it notes here, right? That becomes your canvas. Now you have to pull and sort of, put it together as a strategy. So you define initiatives based on this. But as you do that, right, you're aligning of all the things on my canvas, which ones are initiatives? How do I capture them and justify, right? Is there a cost avoidance? Are there new capabilities I get? Or can I reduce my risks? Boost my top line, guard my bottom line, those type of things, right? You provide option aligning them to budgets, and you basically show certain assessments as well where you exactly stand. So this is all about like getting a buy-in from an initiative standpoint. This is a sample assessment that we've done in the area of data and analytics, where you go look at different aspects for an enterprise and you map what is the level of importance of a defined vision and strategy for data analytics for that organization. Seems to be high, 5, 3, and 3 here, but they are actually 0, right? They don't have one defined. So there are 2 on implementing a strategy that sort of exists in everyone's mind, but they don't really have a lot of these things defined. The gray bar here defines the gap, right? And so you go out of that in a rank out of them, and you kind of frame your initiatives around that piece. So having said that, right, where can we help, right? We do quite a bit of work with data analytics, whether it be at the engineering analytics analysis, working with business folks. and driving those dashboards, insights, models, all of that, governing the data from a compliance. Data quality is big. We see a lot of challenges there, and also some of the solutions that we are working through. Data ops assessments and so on. So we are a Microsoft Gold partner, do a lot of Microsoft Azure implementation, Snowflake partner as well. From a digital standpoint, looking at existing systems, what makes sense to be modernized? Are there ideas inside of what you do, right, with given your products and services? How do you craft these digital strategies? That's something we can help with. Commerce is something we do. We've always had this as a competency, and then almost everything is customized, right? From consulting, engineering, implementation, design, flexible engagement models, and sort of build it, not only define it, but also build it overall from an end-to-end standpoint. So these are some of the places we can help, and some of those canvases, right, will sort of give you like holding buckets, if you will, for your thoughts, and then you craft these into individual like slides that you would take it forward and secure buy-in from overall leadership standpoint and frame your 2021 strategy. So that was my last slide here. I think the next one here is a few questions, if any. We've got about 8 minutes left.
Great, thanks, Nan. That was a really thought-provoking session. We did have a few questions come through, so I'm going to read them off. The first one is, will you share the strategy canvas separately?
Definitely. I think if you reach out, we'll share with you specifically. We'll send it to an email. Happy to set up some time and consult as well.
The next question is, we don't have that many data assets. Do you recommend doing a formal data strategy beyond just our Power BI visualization?
Every organization, so this is a trend, right? The data is exploding every year. If you measure how much data bytes you have, you will see that your organization is generating a lot more compared to the last year. So this is it's not an incremental trend, it's actually an exponential trend. So if you look and really catalog your data assets, you will see so many different assets that you did not necessarily catch when you first generally scan the landscape of IT systems, that you have all this data. Think punch card systems, IoT type systems, and there are customer walking in through the door, right? The bell that rings every time to alert the person at the store. Those are all systems. They're all collecting data. You want all of those data. So yes, it would be worth the exercise going through cataloging the data assets. And don't just stop there, right? Because there's like multiple types of data, dark data, data that's locked up in spreadsheets. There is also like third-party data and data marketplaces that if you can buy those things, you can blend those and create some additional incremental value to the customers in terms of providing insights or value overall, right? So there's a huge data play no matter which industry you're in. So yes, I would strongly recommend spending a little bit of time putting that together.
Great. The next question is, we're weighing moving our data warehouse to the cloud. In the scheme of IT priorities, where do you think this falls?
That would be a very contextual question, right? So typically it depends, right? Basically, look at everything within your landscape, and you would have a variety of initiatives. And you almost have to draw a line to the business priority, right? What is the business looking from an overall growth strategy standpoint, defining margins, mitigating risks? What kind of initiatives that line up to these major objectives? Or is it about innovating and creating a competitive advantage, right? Those are really the four things, which is usually top line, bottom line, mitigate risks, or innovate, right? So where do these initiatives line? One or more, it could be that way too. And then you will have to make a judgment call around that piece. But I think, having sufficient data to back that up, and then enrolling the business to help you, clarify, is this on the right track? That would be where I'd say more from an IT standpoint, but from a business leader standpoint, is about looking at the outward market and making some of those hypotheses or judgment calls. Sorry, that was not a direct answer, so it's very contextual.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Yep, we have one more question. And the last question is, we tend to stay away from custom applications. It looks like the digital systems of record that you mentioned are mostly custom applications. Is there a strong business justification for building custom software?
Yeah, I think so. Today, right? Today's context. Let me talk about a few customers that we have. They're building very customized platforms or applications where they are codifying their secret sauce in how they deliver value to the end customers. So the custom software is not so much of a choice a particular organization makes based on what's available out there. It's more of how you build your own digital business platform. A application is distinctly different from a digital business platform. And digital business platform offers you competitive advantages and the ability to go deep into customers' ecosystem that you cannot actually be easily replaced, right? So you're trying to get into that loyalty, get into being entrenched in the way you offer these value services to the customers. All of that requires a degree of unique software that needs to exist, and thereby the notion of building your own product, if you will. That's where we talk about product manager versus a project manager. And there's a lot of businesses just going that direction. So it's not the custom software of years ago. It's actually this digital business platforms that is so unique that others can't replicate what you have, and thereby you can preserve your market advantage. So that's the context. Yes, would be the answer, short answer, but I did take my time presenting the long answer. So any other questions?
No, those are all the questions that we came in. So thank you, everyone. This concludes our webinar. So glad you could join us today. Please don't hesitate to reach out to us if you have any other further questions. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you all for your time. Have a great rest of your day. Bye. Thanks, Audrey.